and welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and today we have a first impressions video for you focusing on this. This is the ICM kit of a Model T Ford 1917 ambulance in service with the US medical service and having personnel with it. So ICM have released this kit twice. First off, the vehicle on its own, then they added some figures, and Revell have subsequently re-released the ICM kit, the vehicle, on its own. So there's three versions of the same kit on the market. So that gives you some decal options, I guess. Although I think the paint and decal options in this kit are the same as the original release. It's just really the figures that we get. Anyway, our kit number is 35662. We've got a nice piece of artwork on the box which gives you an idea of what you're getting in the box, the vehicle and the poses of the figures, with the stretcher included and so on. It's 1:35 scale, and as is the way from ICM, we've got a top box cover over one of their standard boxes. On the side, it's got a little bit of history. One of the most numerous and famous cars in world history, the Model T, produced by the Ford Motor Company. And so it goes on. It tells us it's a 14 plus, which suggests we've got some photo etching there. And when we look down on this side, we've got the box top information. I think it's the same on the other side, but in another way. So you can stack it on your shelf in your shop. And then when we look at this side, we've got three different views showing some basic markings of the one that's on the front cover there. So let's have a look what we get inside the box. So if we take the lid off, I have cut the tape already, there we go. So our standard approach from ICM, we've got a separate box inside which allows them to I guess reduce the cost because they can buy these in bulk. And as we open it up, we've got our instructions. We've got one bag with our vehicle sprues in, looks like two and a clear. One bag with our figures in. Our figure painting instructions. Start with our figure instructions. And we don't actually have instructions per se. What we get is paint call-outs. On the sprue, the figures are their limbs and anything that goes with them, hats and so on, are all sort of grouped together. So it's fairly intuitive. So you know that all of this is the nurse. You know that all of that is one of the chaps. And so on and so forth, and we've got our stretcher on there as well. They're calling out Revell and Tamiya paints. Now I don't know what the relationship is with ICM and Revell, but there's clearly a relationship. It's very unusual for anyone other than Revell to call Revell paints, because quite frankly they're probably the least used paint system across the modelling hobby. Everyone would use Humbrol before they used Revell. So not for any particular reason. There's nothing particularly wrong with Revell paints. It's just a fact. And then we've got our list of colours there. So and then a list of letters. So when we flip this over, we can see the figures in colour. And wherever we see A, we know that we're painting white and so on. I'm guessing these numbers relate to the numbers on the sprue. So 21 is ahead, 21 is ahead. So that does help you with the assembly as well, I guess. So yeah, so we seem to have three male figures and a nurse. So quite a nice set of figures that, I think. And that is it for the figure instructions. So obviously you could use these or any combination of these with this or any other First World War US vehicle. Okay, the main instruction booklet for the build of the vehicle. It's the usual format for ICM. It's colour, It's slightly glossy, A4, it's stapled. And we start with a bit of history and specifications in English and Ukrainian. Then we've got our paint call-outs for the model. We've got the key at the bottom, and right at the top there we've got a digital image of what the model could look like. And then as we go over onto the first page, we've got our decals. We've got our sprue map, and that has got all our part numbers on, so you can cross-reference. If you take parts off and then can't remember what the number was and you're getting confused, you can cross-reference. And that just confirms we've got 3 sprues, one of which is clear. And then we start our build, as is usually the way when it's a vehicle with our engine block. So I think it's usually good practice to put the basic block together, even if you're going to have it covered up, because you may well see the sump and bits and pieces sticking out of the bottom, particularly on older turn of the century vehicles when they tended to be higher off the ground with spoked wheels and so on and so forth. So even if you think you're not going to see the engine, you know, you might not be bothered with the fan and the pipe work, but it's worth putting the engine block in. So some of that you'll want to build up regardless of what your intention is with the display. Then we're building the radiator, which allows us to put the front axle on. So it's a 2-part radiator, the front part being already moulded into the axle on the leaf springs. So that should reduce the part count a little bit. Then we've got what looks like the fuel tank being built up there. And then as we turn over, we're putting that engine block in, and the fuel tank, and then we've got our manifold, exhaust, and the exhaust box, all in one piece being put in there. So that's going in quite early. And then we've got another axle with the drive shaft going in, so that must be a single part as well. Oh no, sorry, we pre-assembled it there, I beg your pardon, we pre-assembled it. So we're jumping around a little bit, we're pre-assembling and then we're not doing anything with it, and then we're doing something else, then we're putting it in. So probably want to just have a look at your build sequence and decide your process before you start. Then we've got some framework going in, and the steering rack and parts going on the front there, so that'll look suitably busy. And as we flip over, we've got our wheels going on. Look how much of the back end of this vehicle sticks out over those back wheels. That would not be the most comfortable of rides, would it? Then what we're doing, we're building up the back end of it there. We've got some slatted benches going in by the looks of it. One folded, one not. Yeah, so putting the sides in. So we've got the one end, the 2 sides going in. Then we're building up a stretcher. So we must have 2 lots of stretchers, the one with the figures and some with the kit. We'll have a look at that in a minute. We're putting the stretcher in. Then we're putting in the back end of the vehicle and the top bit with the windows. So I'm not quite sure how that works. Does that drop down and that gives you a space to walk in? I think that's possibly what happens, and that's always permanently closed by the looks of it. Okay, flipping it over, we've got well that'll be the upright rest of the seat. We can see the seat going in there along with the pedals and what I guess is the handbrake. Then we're attaching the back end to the chassis. I think I'd be tempted to do that before I put the wheels on. I think I'd be putting the wheels on later, which would help with painting and any weathering, especially if you want to put mud and stuff on. Then we're building up what looks like fuel cans and a windscreen I think that's a material cover with a windscreen going in. I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to have a look at the parts, but I think so. Another component going in near the engine. Then we're mounting that piece in, which goes over the top of the fuel tank there. So I think by the looks of it, we'll see the fuel tank side on. So some of that will be visible. Steering column going in. And then we're installing it. We're at step 38 now, and we're putting together the bonnet, which is a two-part bonnet. So I'm guessing that we could quite easily model that in the upright position, but do remember that that has also got a hinge there, so it sort of collapsed down as it went up. So you might have to do get your razor saw out if you do want to have the engine uncovered. And then we've got, oh right, okay, no, it looks like the fuel tank does get covered. There's a blanking piece going on there which forms the side of the seat there to keep people vaguely in. And then we've got the, not quite sure, it's some form of, I was going to say it's the running board, but that's the running board moulded in there, and it's going above that. So it's forming the mud guard above the top wheel there, which sort of makes a nice sort of storage shelf at the same time. I've no doubt that things were lashed to that. So we're doing that on both sides. Then we've got this roof structure going in. So that looks like the roof top can be folded up, I guess. I'll have a look. Then we've got our rooftop piece going on. We've got some stowage of various types. Right, okay, so that's the roll down canvas cover for the back. Some form of boxes that go on the sides there, along with a spare wheel and a little clamp to hold it in place. Front headlamps being built up and then mounted either side there. Then we've got the other lamps going on and some little loops that go in there. So I'm not sure if that's for the straps that go over the bonnet maybe, or quite what they're for. And then we've got some shovels going on. I'm not quite sure what that is. Maybe a horn, like a klaxon or something. Looks like it's got a windy handle on it. And then we are done. So what have we got? 59 steps. Quite a few steps actually. Paint instructions come next. And it's telling us this is 1970 USA, so it's in the US green. Quite a few decals on it one way or another, and it's telling us that we need to scratch build that. So it's not mentioned in the instructions, but it's telling us that that needs to be scratch built. Right, so if you don't want to have this windscreen cover on, you want to have that taken off, then you need some form of support rods. Okay, that's interesting. And then if we flip over, we've got another two schemes, another US green one. It says France 1918, and then we've got one in blue, so one in the French Army, France 1918. I've got to say, I like the blue one. I think that looks very different to others that I've done. I mean, the last First World War truck I did, I ended up being in the olive drab, so it'd be nice to do something. It's a different colour, isn't it? And that will give us some different effects when we come to do the weathering. And this one doesn't appear to have that front cover option, so we're going to have to look into what that is. But it looks like the cover goes over that, which is some form of collapsible, and then possibly it's a tie down, some form of tether rather than a rod. I'm probably find that that's taut over that, and that's what's keeping that rigid and locked in place. A little bit of research around that, I think. But yeah, that looks really nice, doesn't it? Okay, that's the instructions done. Let's have a look at some plastic. Right, so let's start with our sprue of figures. So we know we've got 4 figures, and we've got a stretcher on there. So if we look at the nurse first, ICM figures can be a little bit rough around the edges sometimes, and I'm guessing there's a little, as we look at the nurse, there's a, like you can see, very faint, but there is, probably when we put some primer on it, it'll be easier to see, there is a little like pinny on the front of that one. So that's clearly the front of the dress and the back there. And then we've got a head dress there, and the head is already moulded into the torso. Yeah, that looks quite good. The hands are well depicted, it's all nice and sharp. We've got a little emblem on the sleeve there, the creases all look natural. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Then we've got this figure here. This is the guy stepping into the ambulance on the box. You can see his legs lifted up there, and he's got a tin helmet on, just got strap connection points. But there's no strap on the actual head, so you could put a little bit of masking tape or a strip of tin foil or something like that to emulate straps and paint them up. Again, figure looks nicely done. There is no belts that I can see. But yeah, the joins at the belt on the trousers, but you're going to have a bit of a nasty join through his top, so a little bit of filling to do there, I suspect. And his pack there looks quite nicely done. And we've got what looks like the pillow cushion for the stretcher there. The stretcher itself, it's got separate legs, so they're nice and clear and crisp. There's a bit of a wood effect on the wood there, but there would be material going around that, so we need to just work out how that would be, but that looks alright, it's all taut. And the other figures look nice and crisp, some with a little medical bag's got a strap there. He's holding something in his hand. Looks like a pad and a pencil, maybe writing down what the symptoms are, what he's feeling, making some medical notes perhaps. And I think this guy, he's got 1 foot out of his boot. We don't have the boot, so we can't depict the boot, but that's going to make for some interesting painting, the foot, isn't it? So I assume there's something wrong with his foot, and he'll be the guy on the stretcher. So there you go. They're quite nice, aren't they? Take some photographs and chuck them in at the end. Okay, sprue A is the larger of our 2 sprues now, and what we've got here is the major large parts as we'd expect. So we've got the floor pan, the sides and end there. We've got the running boards and mud guards all moulded into one. We've got the canvas roof there, the cabin floor pan, a stretcher, another side piece, this front piece, the end of the ambulance body, some of the internal bits there, and then those rear mud flaps, a couple of boxes. So we've got all of the main components here, and first thing I'm going to say is everything looks very nice and crisp. I can't see any flash or any sink, and as usual, no ejector pin marks on the front face surfaces at least. There are some on the inner surfaces, quite small ones, but they are definitely present. Quite a few on there, but they're very small and subtle. A little bit of Mr. Surfacer and the job's done. Right, so let's have a look, starting this corner because I'm interested in this. This definitely looks like it's supposed to be material. And this looks like the tie that you've got a scratch build if you've not got this in place. You can see sort of a raised triangular type strip. So we could easily do that from a bit of plastic card if needs be. Yeah, got a little bit of fastener detail on the back there. Well, that all looks nice and crisp. Then our outside side piece looks good. Might be able to scribe that to open that if we wanted. We've got the end piece there, nice and crisply moulded. I don't know whether we've got glazing for those windows, but I think that we have. Then we've got the wood slats for inside. There's no wood effect on them though. Our mud guards have got all the sort of the raised pipe work on there, the trim. We've got a nice waffle effect on the running board there, so that looks quite nicely done. Like I say, a bit of filling on the underside, but you wouldn't even have to bother if you're doing it really muddy. And then the chassis frame comes out of the back there, and that's nice and crisp as well. Nothing wrong with that. Again, ejector pin marks on the end piece, but nothing major. If you're going to have it open, you'll have to do that. The end mud guards, not much to those really, so they look fine. We've got some nice texture on these. This is the bit that drops down the tailgate, if you like. So quite what they are, I don't know. But if you're going to have the tailgate dropped, you're going to have to do something with the back of that. I don't see that we've got blanking plates, so you might have to do that yourself. There's no particular texturing to that. It's all pretty taut. There's a little bit around the sides, so I guess it's supposed to be pretty tight. There's a framework inside. Again, a lot of injector pin marks to be sorted. Our box, it's got a moulded on padlock. There's no grain effect on it, so but at this scale that's probably right, isn't it? But you could scuff that up if you wanted. Then we've got our back piece, which has got a little bit of creases in, so that's nice. Our spare tyre, that looks okay as well. Yeah, that's all pretty good, that. So we'll take some photographs and add them at the end for a closer look, but here's our parts. Okay, let's have a look at the other through B. So this is the last of our grey plastic, and we've got all the smaller components on there. The part count to this isn't massive, to be honest. Again, everything's very crisply moulded. I don't see any particular issues with the parts at all. So we've got some very thin, fine parts as well. That will have to be removed very carefully. It'll be very delicate, that part. We've got the pedals there, which don't have any texture on. Our engine block, that's our indicator stalks. Our tarpaulin for the back end there that's rolled up. Our shovels, which have got a cover over them, so that's pretty cool. The other part of the tarpaulin, our headlamps or extra driving lamps or whatever they are 2-part. Our wheels, they look lovely. We've got valves, but we don't have any sidewall lettering. The radiator is very subtly textured. That's quite nice actually, that's a nice bit of moulding. Quite a heavy seam across the top of there, however. Steering wheel, that all looks nice. Again, fair amount of seam on the inside there. Need a bit of scraping out. The bonnet on the inside is, well, firstly the bonnet itself is fairly thick. It's a chunky bit of plastic, and then we've got some raised ejector pins. So yeah, gonna be difficult to you can get a razor saw in, and you know, there is a sort of a join showing on the inside, so you could cut it, but it's quite thick to then model as an open bonnet, so I'm not sure about that. Then we've got our exhaust bits, our fuel tanks, no bulbs in the headlamp, so we'll have to sort that ourselves. Legs for the stretchers, some handles there, and what I think are some, it's either the battery or some fuel tins, I'm not sure. Yeah, there's not a lot of parts to it really. Finally, we have our clear parts. So we've got lenses for the various lamps. We've got our glazed parts for the rear of the ambulance, and the bulkhead behind the driver, and then we've got this windscreen, so that's quite chunky, but it's all very clear. No distortion at all, which, you know, they're fairly simple parts. There's no I beg your pardon, I was about to say there's no markings on the headlamps, but there is. In the light I can just see some very faint lines. Probably can't even pick that up on camera. Let's see if we put something dark behind it, if that helps. No, not especially. No, but there is, in the right light I can see some very faint parallel lines. But yeah, that's it, that's our plastic. Quick look at our decals. They all look very nice. They're quite simple decals all in all. Some very vivid colours to break up your olive drab. So that should look quite nice. Although, as you know, I've pretty much decided we'd be doing the blue. But yeah, they all look nice and authentic, don't they? And ICM decals, never really a problem. They're a little bit on the thick side, but they're not, you know, I've never had a problem with ICM decals. So they all look okay. there we have it, the ICM 1 to 35 scale Model T US ambulance. What are my first impressions? Well, I think that the subject matter is interesting. Ambulances always give you a different perspective to a military setting. So they're great for dioramas, and they're interesting when they stand alone. So I always like an ambulance, actually. I went for the one with the figures because it's basically a little diorama in a box. All you need is a base, and you've got something that already tells a story. Now, as those of you that watched the Telford 2022 video that I did would know that the star of the show for me was actually this model. I really enjoyed how it had been modelled and displayed, and that's what's inspired me to purchase this. So I'm looking forward to building it. I think the model itself is fairly straightforward. It's not overcomplicated. The part count's not massive, so it shouldn't be difficult to build. A little bit of research needed around the front end. We can see here there's a bit of strapping with a buckle being shown on the artwork there. So we need to just understand that a little bit more. I feel there's probably a little bit of scratch building needed. But I think the figures look really nice and realistic and natural. So all we've got to do come the time is think about how we want to display it, and away we go. But yeah, I think it's a nice, simple model. Should build up very well. ICM kits never really have a problem in terms of fit. There is no obvious issues with it. So yeah, if you're in the market for something a little bit different and not too complicated, and you don't want to go to the mini art level of having to put every nut and bolt on it individually, that probably is a nice way to go. So have a shop around, because like I say, Revell have re-released it, and there's a version without the figures, and they're all different prices. I think that the figures in the UK are adding about £4 onto the total cost of the kit, so it's almost worth getting them, even if you use them on other things later on. But you might find that the Revell version is slightly cheaper, so if you just want the vehicle to mess around with, that might be a better option. So yeah, I think that's a nice little model. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, thanks for looking in. You enjoy your modelling, and I will see you very soon.